welcome to Wicked Wednesdays with the Water Witch. This is Anwyn and Kitty Softpaw's tail. So today we're going to talk about actually quite a few things. First off, I want to say that I want to address, hold on, let's move Kitty Softpaws here. Kitty cat for everybody. Okay, there we go. She's our naughty kitty. So, alright, a couple things that we want to talk about. First, I'm going to talk about Wicked Wednesdays and a little bit about me, because when I started doing these, I was really nervous, so I just recorded them and then posted them online. I didn't even watch them. I didn't want to see me, and apparently though I'm getting pretty good response, so I went back and I watched them. And I'm kind of funny because I'm like, this is Wicked Wednesdays, which is not really a very wicked thing, or I suppose way to act. So, you know, I really kind of wanted to point out that even though sometimes I am a little cheerful and joyous, do not let that fool you, because that is definitely not me all the time. I definitely do have a darker side. I like to practice necromancy and spirit work, and I work with poison plants and the darker aspects of old world witchcraft, and I have a whole altar set up for that. So in the future we'll actually talk about that a little bit more, but I wanted to address that because I thought, you know, if I am thinking it, then you guys are probably thinking, why is this girl so cheerful about Wicked Wednesdays? So don't let the cheerful side of me fool you into thinking that I'm not wicked. So that being said, I really do work the duality of the light and the dark, and I really like. You won't see it today because we have so many other things to talk about, but in front of me here, to where I usually sit to my left, is what I consider my old world witchcraft altar, and then behind me is my lighter half of the year. And so I really do work those energies, and like I said, we'll talk about that a little bit more. The next thing that I wanted to talk about is this. I always wear this for the videos, and this is, so you've heard of taking on putting on the mantle, or the wearing the green mantle, and stuff like that. So when I started practicing my watercraft, I really was interested in figuring out some sort of ritual type of wear that I could wear for my watercraft. However, it seems to be very old world / folkloric / traditional in nature. And so wearing a tea robe or a hooded robe or anything like that is very ceremonial, and it just didn't feel right. So I came up with the idea of wearing a shawl. Very much kind of tapping into the energies of a woman in the maybe Victorian era, or previously before that, even into maybe the early 1900s, the pre-Gardner, pre-rise of neo-paganism type woman, and what she would have worn. And women throughout time, before the 1950s especially, wore shawls. And so I chose a blue shawl of natural fibers, and I actually chose it off of Etsy. I tried to have someone make it for me, actually a few different people, and it just wasn't working out. So I decided that I did want something handmade, and so I got it off of Etsy from an artist who had some more magical leanings, and I'm really, really pleased with it. I chose a pattern that was very net-like, so that it had the feel of a fishnet. And the reason that I wanted to show it to you is because it's going to evolve. It has been evolving over the time period that I've been wearing it and working with it. And recently I was at, well, two things happened. One, my sister lives in Okinawa, Japan, and I had carried some shells back, some cowrie shells back years ago from when I lived there, and I just didn't have enough, so she actually went out and collected some more for me. And I also went to the beach in California. And what I do when I go there is I look for things that are shells, beautiful shells, that can be tied onto this shawl. And I'll show you here. This one is just a little spiral shell that I had found a couple weeks ago in California. This one here is a large cowrie shell half. This one was one of the ones that I brought. And then here is, let's see, this is one of the half cowries that my sister had sent. It's a lot smaller. Actually, I'm going to hold that up together so you guys can see. There's the size difference on those. Look at that. And so, oh, and here's another spiral. So this whole shawl, as it's going around, has shells of various shapes and sizes tied to it. And as my work progresses, charms, bones, and more shells are going to be added to it. And oops, you can see Kitty Top Paws right there. There she is. She's very naughty, always standing behind me. Okay, we have to move on because we have so much to talk about today. The next thing is I was at Pantheacon last weekend, and I am freshly home. I've only been home for another cat's making noise. I've only been home for a few days, still a little tired, still not unpacked, even clothes. But a lot of people have been asking me, tell me about Pantheacon. And I start telling them, and then I'm just like, there's just too much. So I'm going to give you a brief synopsis of what I did. First off, I want to say that I met some amazing people. Some blew my mind, some were, you know, just as awesome as I expected them to be. There were a few disappointments. We're not going to talk about that, though, to protect the innocent and guilty, I suppose. So we're just going to start with my notes from the different classes that I took. Now, these are not all the classes that I took, because some were rituals, and some I just didn't take notes in. So the two rituals that I did take that I wanted to talk about were Aphrodite rituals that were hosted by Yishu Rabbit and her group out of California. And I work with Aphrodite as a sea goddess or a water goddess, and they were really, really inspiring rituals. We'll probably talk about them a little bit more in the future because we have so much to cover today, but I do want to share something that I got. After one of the rituals, I was so deeply touched by the work that Yishu Rabbit does and the confidence that she has, that she really inspired me. So I do work with Aphrodite, as you've seen in the past video, but I have been really wanting to get the Birth of Venus statue, and I finally got it. And so a shrine will be set up to her. She's freshly unpacked from her box, so I'll just give you a little view of her here. I am just so thrilled with her. I may paint her. I think for now I'm going to keep her in this state and just kind of see how things progress. Okay, so on to the classes. So the very first class that I took was Fiber Magic, Binding Intentions with Lee Harrington. Now, I actually was not familiar with Lee Harrington's work, and I took the class because I thought, you know, I've been working with fibers, some knotwork, some hand sewing, and stuff like that lately, so let's take this class. Total awesome class. If you have the opportunity to work with him or take his class or anything like that, absolutely do it. Not only is he just fabulous and gorgeous, but he's hilarious and very knowledgeable. And the first thing that I want to share about his class is he totally blew my mind with something that he had said. he was talking about, and this is not necessarily fiber, but he was talking about informed consent and sharing your energy. And one of the things that he had said was, I'm allergic to Reiki. And at first I was like, well, that's not possible. You can't be allergic to Reiki. But then what he was talking about was the sharing of energy. You say you have a bad day, and then you say, then someone's like, oh, I'm going to send you Reiki, or I'm going to send you energy. And, you know, that's great, but the thing is what if that person doesn't know how to process your energy very, very well? Or they don't want to? And so that's why he says things like, I'm allergic to Reiki. You should probably go follow his page. I know that he said that he's posted it everywhere. I haven't seen it yet, but it was fantastic. Let me check my notes here and see if I wrote anything else down on it. No, I don't think so. But it was funny, and I thought it was great. So we talked about fiber, and how fiber is potential, and how it has lineage, and it creates through consciousness. I don't want to give too much. I took a lot of notes. I felt like I was like jotting down like every other word he was saying, because I don't want to take his work away from him. But I do want to talk about a few more of these things so that it maybe inspires you to go and buy his books, or work with him, or follow his pages. He did bring up hair braiding, which I thought was cool. I have a new prayer braid in. Some of the things that I wrote down were looking into Roman hairstyles, because apparently they had very specific hairstyles for different things. So altering your state of consciousness as you're braiding your hair, and weekly intentions. We also talked about Russian folk magic, and how you can use a single red strand with 9 knots to curse. And the fiber is chosen because it takes time to rot. This also gives you time to undo the spell if needed. And I thought that was really fantastic. I liked how fiber gives you the time. So not only does it give you time to undo, but if you need a long spell, or something where you need to hold the energy for a long time, putting it into fiber is better than to a piece of paper. We also talked about tying the knots, and how that solidifies the energy. But if you need to loosen the energy, then you can loosen the knots. And I had actually not thought about that. I've always thought about tying knots as the act of magic, and tying things and binding things. But to unbind and to release the energy is just as powerful as the actual tying of the knot. So, okay, so we're going to move on from his class because we have a lot. And I think that we'll probably do some talks for Wicked Wednesdays on some of the more important things that I've touched on. So the next class that I took was with Raven Grimassi, and can I just say that I have a total magic crush on him. He is way more than I expected. I mean, I knew he was a powerhouse, and I knew that he was a respected elder, and I have a couple of his books, but holy cow, his presence and his energy is phenomenal. He is coming out with a new book, which I have already ordered, so go to Amazon and order it. I'm going to tell you what the name of it is. It is the, let's see if I can remember it here. It is the Grimoire of the Bloodthorn Witch. And it comes out in August, but you can pre-order it on Amazon, so go right now, go get it. It's going to be worth it. A lot of what he talked about, he said, is going to be in there. But he basically was talking about plant spirits and the greenwood, and he talked about plants and how their roots are a connection like the brain, how they connect under the earth and they send signals to each other. They also communicate through leaf chemicals and fungus. Let's see here. We also talked about some of the different, oh, here we go. Sorry you guys, I'm looking through my notes here. There we go. I skipped back a little. So we also talked about how plants actually can release a chemical when a bug is eating it that will actually attract its predator to eat that bug. So plants actually have a consciousness and they have defense mechanisms. We also talked about the word pharmakoute and how pharmakoute is a Greek word that originally meant witch. And there's a little bit more to that, but just for now, it's the oldest word that is called witch. And the plants, he was talking about how the plants have memory, and so they remember pharmakoute, and they remember that word, and they remember that, you know, witches and healers used to work with the land, and that who we are as a human race now is much different. But if you talk to the plants and you tell them that you're pharmakoute, that they understand and they remember that. We also talked about the knowing, and I thought that this was really interesting. He said you don't need an explanation as to why. It is just the thing to do, and this is called the knowing. It's that intuition that, well, I know that. And a lot of times you don't need that explanation, you just need to trust. We also talked about some of the Thorn-Blooded Witch stuff, which I don't want to get into because I want you to go buy his book and I want you to read it. Or at least take this class if you can with someone else. Or, sorry, take this class with him somewhere else. Alright, so we're going to move on from that. I took another plant class with Lupe, and it was on plant, fungus, and totems. And it was a little bit more environmentally based. And unfortunately I had to leave, so I didn't actually get to take the whole class. The next class that I wanted to talk about was Trance Dance with the Jinn, with Yasmin Heknesh. Now, my dance teacher's name is Artemis Murat, and I studied Turkish dance with her through her intensives and some private lessons, and she's a wonderful, wonderful lady. Her best friend is Yasmin, and they've worked together for years, and they share a website, serpentine.org. And when I saw that Yasmin was on the Pantheacon schedule, I kind of like dropped the jaw, because these are two different worlds that are colliding. And so I took her class, and she was really excited to see me, and she remembered me, which was kind of cool, because we've actually sacred danced together before. She said that it was really nice to see a dancer, someone from her world, there. It was the very first time that she had been to Pantheacon and really lectured in this type of setting, with pagans versus dancers. But I thought that she did a really good job, considering the fact that she's used to trained dancers and people of the Middle Eastern realm and not the pagan realm. And we talked about some of the history behind it, and you know, going from your beta into your theta state, and actually basically bringing that trance state on. Now, she has a very unique, well, I shouldn't say she has, the Dancing with the Jinn style has a very unique perspective. And basically what their perspective is that you have to overload the brain. Once the fuses of the brain blow, then this induces the trance state. And what she's talking about overloading and blowing the brain is this figure 8 movement with the upper body and with the head, and doing it in this movement so that it becomes faster and faster and faster, and you can even do a forward and a back, and a forward and a back. And we danced vigorously for 20 minutes. I actually danced on my knees. And you get yourself with this figure 8 or this back and forth motion to the point that you are sick, that you're dizzy, that you want to throw up. And then you push yourself through that. And you keep going and you don't stop. And then you reach that state. And with the history behind this is when the woman who is doing this trance dance then appeases the jinn that has possessed her. And by doing this dance and getting to this state, the jinn is then pleased and leaves. Again, this is a quick synopsis. There's so much more to all of this. And we may talk about it in the future, but I just wanted to give you a brief overview of that. So, I was actually pretty pleased with myself. Sorry, we have another kitty cat over here acting up. I was really pleased with myself with this because I wasn't sure how well I was going to do, even with a dance background. There were some men that were left kind of crawling on the floor when I left, and that, you know, some people were very, very woozy. I was woozy after we finished, versus kind of during. But, you know, I was pleased. I walked out of there. A friend of a friend actually asked me when I came out, he said, "How many toes do you have?" And I said, "Well, I have 10 toes." He says, "Well, how many do you perceive?" And I said, 3. So I really was in this other state. The only regret I think that I have is coming down. We ran out of time, so we came down really, really fast, versus maybe a slow exit out of the trance state. Okay, so the next thing was trance ritual facilitation. And my friend and I took this class, and this was more of a, if you're a ritual facilitator, how to really make good rituals and trance-inducing environments. So I'm not going to bore you guys with some of the information here, because this is more of, you know, the facilitation side of things. However, you know, I learned a lot. It looks like I took 6 pages of notes on this one. So hopefully this helps me become a better ritual facilitator. And there's Kitty Softpaws acting up again. She's such a bad kitty cat. Okay, so I'm sorry that I'm talking fast today, but I want to cover a lot. So let me flip forward here for just a second into the next one. Ooh, I also was able to take Christopher Penzak's Sabbath of the Mighty Dead. And he's fantastic. I got to meet him. I got a picture with him. However, I did not participate in the ritual in the way I was supposed to. It was a meditation, a deep meditation, and you know, we went through the gates, the archway, and then we were supposed to follow along, and I went off and did something else. Apparently my friend did as well. So really great at creating that environment for us to take a journey, and I did a deep journey. Unfortunately, it was not the journey that he had scripted out for us, which I don't think that he would mind. So the next one that I took was R.J. Stewart's Furry Magic of Rudyard Kipling. And if you're not familiar with Rudyard Kipling, he wrote the Jungle Book, as well as some other things. He also, R.J. Stewart was talking about that he was most likely a Mason, a member of the Rosicrucianists. He was really big into ceremonial magic. He also inspired people like Tolkien and C.S. Lewis. He read us some of the poetry, which had been infused with hidden magical words and themes. And there's 2 books, Puck of Pook's Hill and Rewards and Fairies, that he recommended and that we talked about. And when he was talking to Puck of Pook's Hill, he was talking about Puck and how this is actually more of a supreme fairy being of some sort, who kind of defies the laws of the realms. He's not, he can cross water, and he's not opposed to iron and things like this. An interesting thing that I had found that he had mentioned is in one of these 2 books, and I can't remember which one it is, there is a ritual that takes place, and the priestesses are they're named the Maiden, the Mother, and the Crown. Now, this is really, really interesting, because first off, there's priestesses, and we're mentioning the Maiden, the Mother, and the Crown. And if you don't know this, he is pre-Robert Graves. He is late 1800s, early 1900s, and Robert Graves didn't come out with the White Goddess until 1930. And a lot of people talk about how Robert Graves made up the White Goddess and the Maiden, the Mother, the Crown. However, this is not necessarily the case. We now have a reference to the Maiden, the Mother, and the Crone from before Robert Graves. There'll be more on this later because I actually need to look into it. I personally am not in a space where I'm working with the Triple Goddess or I'm resonating with that particular path. However, there's been a really big war on this, on Wicca and Maiden, the Mother, the Crone, and the Triple Goddess, and I think that we're going to end up coming back to this because this is really, really interesting. We have something here from a magical practitioner that's pre-Robert Graves that is mentioning the Maiden and the Mother and the Crone. So I need to do some research. I need to dive into it a little bit more, find out some more information that I can share with you. But stay tuned because there will be more. The next class that I was able to take notes on, let's flip through here, is Healing the Wounded Queen by Jenna Taliandrew, which I believe I probably just mispronounced, but it's actually Gina. I've actually called her Jenna, and it's actually Gina is her first name. And we talked about sovereignty, and I have not really resonated with sovereignty because what I usually think of it as is with Morpheus and the Koru Kabuba priesthood and their very warrior path. And it's this warrior path that talks about, you know, the sovereignty and bringing all this back to the land. Well, Gina actually talked about it from a different perspective. She talked about it from the wounded queen perspective and more of a healing. And it could be the same concept, but you put it in different context and it makes sense to different people. And so it really talked about the sovereignty, and if the queen, you, has a wound, it is reflected on the land, your home. And in order to bring sovereignty back to the land, you have to heal those wounds. So basically, in order to bring healing and peace and perfection and balance back to your home, you have to heal your own wounds. And I think that mothers and priestesses and leaders in a household tend to put everyone else first and forget about themselves. But what this really taught me was, in order for me to care for them and to do a really good job with them, I have to take better care of myself. Gina had said that this was the whole point of her talk, is summed up right here. Basically, this whole class taught us that what the woman wants is sovereignty. And sovereignty is we get to choose what we want. And when we do, the shadow, the wound, falls away, and our sovereign selves come forth, and we heal and shine. And she also gave a simple definition of sovereignty, and she calls it conscious self-determination. So I thought that was really interesting. In fact, we're going to be doing, I'm going to be hosting a Healing the Wounded Queen ritual and meditation that is not based on this, but is inspired from this talk and is based off of my own practice as an Avalonian. So moving on, because I know that we have to actually probably sum up. I've been talking for about 30 or so minutes now. So I just wanted to say that I had the most excellent time at Pantheacon, and in the weeks to come I'll be reflecting on some of these concepts and some of the things that we've talked about much deeper. So please follow me on Facebook. It's Facebook / all that stuff, Triskel Rose, or you can find me under Anwin Avalon, as well as Water Witch in the West. And the website, as always, is www.waterwitchinthewest.com. And we will see you next week for Wicked Wednesday for some in-depth reflections on some of the things that we've talked about today. So I hope you have a Wicked Wednesday.